Jinwoo Park walked slowly across the metal floor of the Great Council chamber, and his black boots made small clicking sounds with each step, as thousands of alien eyes watched him move toward the speaking platform at the center of the massive room that stretched so high above that the ceiling disappeared into darkness, and so wide that the far walls looked like distant mountains covered in glowing lights from countless alien species who had traveled from across the galaxy to witness this moment that would change everything forever. The Altarian representatives sat in their crystal chairs that floated 3 feet above the ground, and their blue skin seemed to glow with anger, while their 6 arms moved in quick, jerky motions. As they whispered to each other in their clicking language that sounded like metal hitting glass, and Jinwoo could see their leader Velthok staring at him with those huge black eyes that had no emotion in them at all, which made Jinwoo think of looking into deep space where nothing lived and nothing ever would. Behind Jinwoo walked Admiral Sujin Kim, whose silver uniform bore the marks of countless space battles and whose right hand rested on the weapon at her hip, not because she planned to use it, but because old habits from fighting pirates in the outer systems die hard, and she had learned long ago that showing strength prevented more fights than it started, and today strength would be very important, because what they were about to do had never been done before in the 3,000-year history of the Galactic Council. Chief Scientist Hoban Lee followed them both and carried a small silver device in his hands that looked like nothing special but contained information. That would shock every alien in this chamber if they knew what it really was. And Hoban had spent the last 5 years of his life working on the project that made this device possible. And he knew that after today, nothing would ever be the same. For humanity, or for any other species in the known galaxy. The Zephyrian delegation floated in their energy bubbles that crackled with purple electricity, and their thin bodies that looked like they were made of glass moved inside the bubbles like dancers underwater, and they had always supported whatever the Altarians wanted because they feared what would happen if they disagreed, and this fear had made them weak, and their weakness had made the galaxy a more dangerous place for everyone who was not strong enough to fight back. Jinwoo reached the speaking platform and placed his hands on the smooth surface that immediately began to glow with soft blue light, while translation devices throughout the chamber hummed to life and would carry his words to every alien species present in their own languages, and he took a deep breath because he knew that what he was about to say would either free humanity from 3 years of growing restrictions and unfair treatment, or it would start a war that could destroy Earth and every human colony in space. The chamber fell silent, and even the deep dwellers who lived underwater and had to speak through their mechanical suits stopped making the bubbling sounds that served as their language, and thousands of aliens leaned forward in their seats or floated closer to their viewing screens or adjusted their sensory organs to better hear what the human ambassador was about to say, and Jinwoo could feel the weight of their attention, like a physical force pressing down on him. For 3 standard years, humanity had tried to work within the Galactic Council system and had followed every rule and regulation, even when those rules made no sense and served only to limit human growth and expansion while allowing other species to do whatever they wanted, and the unfairness of it all had grown worse with each passing month as the Altarians pushed through more and more restrictions on human activities in space. The breaking point had come just 7 days ago when the Council voted to place all human military technology under Altarian oversight and inspection, which meant that alien beings would have access to every weapon system, every defensive technology, and every secret that Earth had developed to protect itself and its colonies, and this was something that no human leader could accept because it would leave Earth defenseless against any future attack. Jinwoo looked out at the sea of alien faces and began to speak in a calm, clear voice that showed no sign of the anger that burned inside him like a star ready to explode, and his words were simple and direct because humanity had learned that when dealing with aliens, it was best to be very clear about what You meant so there could be no confusion later about what had been said or what had been agreed to. The representatives of Earth have made a decision that will take effect immediately and without any possibility of change or negotiation. And this decision has been approved by every human government on Earth and in the colonies, and by every military commander and every civilian leader who speaks for humanity anywhere in the galaxy. And the decision is this: humanity hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council and renounces all treaties, agreements, and obligations that bind us to this organization and to any member species of this organization, and effective immediately all human space, including Earth and every human colony and every human ship and station, becomes sovereign territory that will be governed by human law and defended by human forces. The chamber erupted in chaos as aliens began shouting in dozens of different languages, and the translation systems could not keep up with all the different voices speaking at once, and some aliens jumped to their feet, while others floated higher in the air, and still others began flashing different colors, which was how some species showed strong emotion, and the noise grew, so loud that it hurt human ears and made the walls of the chamber vibrate. Velthok rose from his crystal chair, and his 6 arms moved in rapid gestures while he spoke in the clicking Altarian language that sounded like angry insects. And when the translation came through, his words were full of threats about what would happen to humanity if they tried to leave the Council, and how the Altarians would not allow such a dangerous species to roam free in the galaxy without proper supervision and control. But Jinwoo was not finished speaking, and he waited for the noise to die down before he continued. And when the chamber finally became quiet again, his next words hit the assembled aliens like a blast of cold space wind and made them realize that humanity was not asking for permission to leave the Council, but was simply informing them that the decision had already been made. We will honor all existing trade agreements for exactly 60 standard days, and during this time, human merchants will continue to fulfill their contracts, and human ships will continue to carry cargo and passengers for alien species. But after 60 days, all such agreements will end, and any alien ship or person found in human space without proper authorization will be considered an invader and will be dealt with accordingly. The silence that followed these words was complete and absolute, and lasted for nearly a full minute as the aliens tried to understand what they had just heard and the implications of what it meant for the galaxy and for their own species and their own plans and their own survival, because many alien civilizations had become dependent on human technology and human resources and human expertise in ways they had never fully realized. Sujin Kim stepped forward and activated a small device that sent a quantum signal across space faster than light, and that signal would reach Earth in less than an hour and would trigger events that had been planned and prepared for years. And that would show the galaxy exactly how serious humanity was about this decision, and exactly how capable humans really were when they stopped pretending to be weak and helpless. The human delegation turned and walked toward the exit, while aliens shouted questions and demands and threats behind them. But Jinwoo did not look back, because there was nothing more to say and nothing more to discuss, and the time for talking was over, and the time for action had finally come, and humanity was ready for whatever happened next. President Miran Choi stood behind the podium in the Great Assembly Hall of the United Earth Government Building in Seoul and looked out at the faces of 300 representatives from every nation and colony that humanity had established among the stars, and these men and women had traveled from Mars and Europa, and the mining stations around Jupiter, and the farming worlds of Alpha Centauri, to hear what their president had to say about the decision that would change the course of human history forever. The signal from Ambassador Jinwoo Park had arrived exactly 43 minutes ago and had triggered a series of events that had been planned in secret for more than 5 years by a small group of humans who understood that someday Earth might need to stand alone against the galaxy, and who had worked day and night to make sure that when that day came, humanity would be ready for whatever challenges awaited them in the darkness between the stars. Dr. Taehoon Yu walked onto the Stage carrying a silver briefcase that contained documents and data storage devices that held secrets so important that only 12 people in the entire galaxy knew they existed, and these secrets would shock every alien species and would prove that humanity had been far more clever and far more prepared than anyone had imagined, and that the decision to leave the Galactic Council was not an act of desperation, but an act of strength. The assembly hall fell silent as President Choi began to speak, and her voice was carried by quantum transmitters to every human world and every human ship and every human outpost scattered across hundreds of light-years of space, so that every member of the human species would hear these words at the same time, and would understand that they were no longer subjects of the Galactic Council, but were once again free people who answered to no one but themselves. For too long, we have allowed alien species to tell us where we can go and what we can do, and how we can defend ourselves, and we have followed their rules even when those rules made no sense and served only to keep humanity weak and dependent. And today that ends forever, because we have capabilities that no alien species knows about. And we have been preparing for this moment since the day we first joined the Galactic Council. Dr. Tae-Hun-Yu opened his briefcase and removed a data pad that glowed with soft blue light, and he handed it to President Choi, who held it up so that the cameras could see it. And she explained that this device contained proof that humanity had been developing technologies in secret that were far more advanced than anything the Altarians or Zephyrians or any other alien species possessed, and that these technologies would allow Earth to survive and prosper without any help from the galaxy. The first revelation came when Dr. Yoonji Nam walked onto the stage, and her name was already known to scientists throughout human space because of her work on quantum mechanics and space-time theory. But what the Assembly did not know was that 3 years ago she had made a breakthrough that changed everything, and had discovered how to manipulate dark matter in ways that allowed ships to travel faster than light without using any alien technology at all. Dr. Nam explained in simple terms that every alien species in the galaxy used the same basic, faster-than-light technology that had been developed by the Altarians thousands of years ago, and this technology required special materials that could only be found on certain worlds and could only be processed using techniques that the Altarians controlled, and this gave them power over every species that wanted to travel between the stars. But human scientists had found a different way, and had learned to bend space and time itself using modified dark matter that existed everywhere in the universe, and required no special materials and no alien permission, and this meant that humanity could travel anywhere they wanted without depending on alien technology or alien cooperation, and could do so faster and more efficiently than any other species in the galaxy. Captain Donghyun Ryu appeared on the main viewing screen, and he was standing on the bridge of the UES Defiance, which was currently in orbit around Earth. But as the Assembly watched, he gave orders to his crew, and the ship activated its new, faster-than-light drive, and in the space of a single heartbeat, the Defiance vanished from Earth orbit and reappeared in the Proxima Centauri system 4 light-years away. The journey that should have taken 3 weeks using standard Altarian faster-than-light technology had been completed in less than 1 second, and Captain Ryu reported that his ship had suffered no damage and used less energy than a standard flight from Earth to Mars, and this demonstration proved that humanity now possessed the most advanced transportation technology in the known galaxy, but transportation was only the beginning. And Dr. Tae-Hun-Yu revealed that the Shadow Research Division had been working on dozens of other projects that had produced breakthrough technologies in energy generation, materials, science weapons, systems defensive shields, and computer processing power, and all of these technologies had been developed without any alien knowledge or assistance. The Assembly learned that human ships were now protected by armor that could withstand the heat of a star and powered by fusion reactors that were smaller and more efficient than anything aliens had ever built, and armed with weapons that could destroy asteroids with a single shot and equipped with shields that could deflect any known form of energy weapon. And all of this had been accomplished while the aliens thought humans were still struggling with primitive technology. Hana Song stepped forward, and she had served as Earth's economic representative to the Galactic Council for 2 years. And during that time, she had carefully studied every aspect of the galactic economy and had discovered something that shocked even the humans who had sent her to gather intelligence. And that was that alien civilizations had become far more dependent on human contributions than anyone had realized. She explained that human engineers maintained the computer systems that controlled transportation throughout the galaxy, and human technicians repaired the machinery that kept alien cities running. And human scientists had solved problems that had puzzled alien researchers for centuries, and human workers had become essential to mining operations and manufacturing facilities on hundreds of worlds. The aliens had not noticed this happening because it had occurred gradually over many years, and because humans had been careful to make their contributions seem small and unimportant, when in fact they had become the foundation that supported much of the galactic economy. And without human knowledge and human expertise, many alien civilizations would find themselves unable to maintain their technology or their way of life. President Choi revealed that Earth had been preparing for this moment by quietly training replacement workers, and by developing automated systems that could take over the jobs that humans currently performed for alien species, and when the 60-day notice period ended, these systems would be activated and humans would withdraw from all economic activities in alien space. The most shocking revelation came when Admiral Soo-Jin Kim appeared on screen and announced that humanity had been secretly building a new fleet of warships using technologies that no alien species possessed, and these ships were faster and stronger and more heavily armed than anything in the galaxy and had been hidden in deep space where alien sensors could not detect them. She explained that if any alien species decided to attack Earth or human colonies in response to the withdrawal from the Galactic Council, they would discover that humanity was far from defenseless and was in fact capable of defending itself against any threat and of striking back against any aggressor with devastating force. The assembly hall erupted in cheers as humans realized that their species had not only escaped from alien control, but had done so from a position of strength and had proven that human intelligence and human determination could overcome any obstacle and could achieve things that other species thought impossible. President Choi raised her hand for silence, and when the cheering stopped, she spoke her final words to the assembly and to all of humanity scattered among the stars, and she told them that today marked the beginning of a new age for their species, and that they would never again bow to alien authority or accept alien limitations on human potential. The age of human independence had begun, and it had begun not with surrender or retreat, but with the revelation that humanity had already surpassed their former masters in every way that mattered, and was ready to take its place as the most advanced and most capable species in the galaxy. High Commander Kethral stood in the war room of the Altarian Supreme Command Center on their homeworld and stared at the holographic displays that showed the current status of Altarian military forces throughout the galaxy, and what he saw made his blue skin turn pale because more than 60% of their weapon systems were showing error messages and warning signals that indicated critical failures in targeting computers and navigation systems and fire control mechanisms. The problems had started exactly 18 hours after the humans announced their withdrawal from the Galactic Council, and at first the Altarian technicians thought they were dealing with random equipment failures that could be easily repaired, but as more and more systems began failing, they realized that something much more serious was happening, and that the failures were not random at all, but were part of a pattern that pointed to one terrifying conclusion. Every piece of military equipment that Contained human-manufactured components was shutting down and could not be restarted no matter what the Altarian engineers tried, and this meant that the most advanced weapons in the Altarian arsenal were now nothing more than expensive metal, sculptures that could not fire a single shot or target a single enemy ship, and the same problem was affecting every other alien military force in the galaxy on. The Zephyrian homeworld, the energy grids that powered their cities began flickering and dimming as the fusion cores that had been maintained by human technicians started experiencing cascading failures that their own engineers could not understand or repair, and within hours entire districts were plunged into darkness, while Zephyrian leaders frantically tried to contact human technical support teams only to discover that all communication channels with human space had been severed. The merchant worlds that served as trading centers for dozens of different alien species watched, in horror, as their economies collapsed overnight when the computer networks that managed interstellar commerce suddenly stopped working and cargo ships found themselves unable to navigate between star systems, and trading companies discovered that their financial records had become inaccessible and their automated systems had shut down completely. Arvin Olek was a deep-dweller trade minister who controlled shipping routes that carried goods worth billions of credits across the galaxy, and he had built his fortune by hiring human logistics experts who could solve problems that baffled alien minds and could find efficient solutions to complex transportation challenges. But now those humans were gone, and his entire operation was falling apart. He tried desperately to reach Ambassador Jihoon Bey, who had replaced Jinwoo Park as Earth's representative for the 60-day transition period, and he offered to pay any price that the humans demanded if they would just send their technicians back to fix the systems that were failing throughout his trading empire. But Ambassador Bey politely refused and explained that all negotiations would have to wait until the transition period was complete. On 17 different worlds, alien scientists and engineers worked frantically to reverse engineer the human technologies that their civilizations had become dependent on. But they quickly discovered that human devices were far more sophisticated than they appeared and contained components and programming that seemed to operate on principles that no alien species understood, and every attempt to copy or repair human technology resulted in complete failure. Dr. Sung-hee Park monitored the chaos from her command center deep beneath the mountains of Earth, and she watched through hidden sensors and secret communication networks as alien civilizations struggled to maintain their technology without human assistance, and her analysis showed that the situation was even worse than the humans had predicted, because the aliens had become dependent on human expertise in ways that even the humans had not fully realized. The transportation network that connected thousands of worlds began breaking down as navigation. Computers failed and maintenance systems stopped working, and fuel processing plants shut down, and within days, hundreds of alien ships were stranded in deep space with no way to reach their destinations and no way to call for help, because the communication satellites that carried messages across the galaxy were also failing. The Altarian leadership convened emergency sessions as they realized that their military forces were effectively blind and helpless and could not fight a war against anyone, let alone against humans who had apparently been preparing for this situation for years, and High Commander Kethral found himself in command of the most powerful military force in the galaxy that could not fire its weapons or navigate to its targets. Speaker Velthok demanded answers from his scientists about how the humans had managed to make themselves so essential to Altarian technology without anyone noticing, and the answers he received made him realize that humanity had been far more clever and far more patient than any Altarian had imagined, and had spent years quietly inserting themselves into every critical system in Altarian society. The Zephyrian Council of Elders faced the possibility that their entire civilization might collapse if they could not restore power to their cities, and they authorized their diplomats to offer the humans anything they wanted in exchange for technical assistance. but the human response was always the same, and always delivered with polite firmness that no negotiations would take place until the 60-day period expired. Commander Youngman Ko led a fleet of human stealth ships that monitored alien military movements throughout the galaxy, and he reported that several alien governments were moving their remaining functional warships toward human space in what appeared to be preparation for military action. But these ships were operating at reduced efficiency because their most advanced systems were no longer working. Stealth ships used technology that no alien species could detect, and they moved through space like invisible ghosts that could observe everything while remaining completely hidden. And Commander Ko's reports showed that the alien military forces were in much worse condition than their governments were willing to admit publicly. On the industrial worlds that manufactured goods for the galactic economy, production lines ground to a halt as the computer systems that controlled automated factories crashed and could not be restarted, and quality control systems failed and shipping networks collapsed. And within a week, the flow of manufactured goods throughout the galaxy had slowed to a trickle. The agricultural worlds that fed billions of people across hundreds of star systems discovered that their crop management systems and weather control networks and irrigation computers were failing. And if these problems could not be solved quickly, entire populations would face starvation, and the alien governments that ruled these worlds had no idea how to fix the human-designed systems that kept their people alive. Banking networks that handled financial transactions across the galaxy experienced cascading failures as the quantum encryption. Systems that protected financial data stopped working, and credit transfers became impossible, and currency exchange rates fluctuated wildly, and economic experts predicted that a complete financial collapse was only days away. The alien governments tried to hide the severity of the crisis from their populations, but news of the failures spread quickly, and panic began to set in as people realized that their civilizations had become completely dependent on a species that they had spent years trying to control and limit, and that had now withdrawn its support and left them helpless. Emergency meetings were held on dozens of worlds as alien leaders tried to find solutions to problems that seemed impossible to solve, and they began to understand that humanity had not simply left the Galactic Council, but had revealed that the entire galactic civilization was built on a foundation that humans controlled, and that without human cooperation, the galaxy would collapse into chaos and barbarism. Some alien species attempted to contact Earth directly and offered to negotiate separate agreements that would restore human technical support to their worlds, but every such attempt was politely rejected, and the humans made it clear that they would not return to their previous roles as servants and maintenance workers for alien civilizations. The proud Altarians, who had spent centuries believing that they were the most advanced species in the galaxy, found themselves facing the humiliating realization that their technology was primitive compared to human capabilities, and that their military might was useless without human assistance, and that their entire civilization was at the mercy of a species they had tried to suppress. Admiral Hyunwoo Lim stood on the bridge of the UES horizon and watched through the main viewing screen as the Altarian war fleet approached the outer edge of the Sol system, where Neptune's pale blue surface reflected the distant light of Earth's sun, and he knew that this moment would determine whether humanity's declaration of independence would be respected or whether it would lead to a war that could destroy civilizations across the galaxy. The Altarian fleet consisted of 200 warships, including their most powerful battle cruisers and their fastest attack vessels and their most advanced carriers filled with fighter craft, and they had been built using technology that the Altarians believed made them superior to any other military force in the galaxy, but they were about to discover how wrong they had been about human capabilities. High Commander Kethral commanded the Altarian fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, which was 3 kilometers long, and carried enough firepower to destroy planets, and he believed that a display of overwhelming force would convince the humans to surrender and return to their proper place as subjects of the Galactic Council. But he had no idea that human technology had advanced far beyond anything the aliens possessed. Admiral Lim activated his communication system and sent a message to the approaching Altarian fleet warning them that they were entering human space without authorization and ordering them to turn back immediately. But High Commander Kethrall responded with threats and demands that the humans submit to Altarian authority and return to the Galactic Council or face the consequences of their rebellion. The human fleet that met the Altarians at Neptune's edge consisted of only 50 ships, but these vessels had been built using Dr. Yunji Nam's breakthrough discoveries in space-time manipulation and dark matter control, and they possessed capabilities that no alien species had ever imagined. And that would demonstrate the true extent of human technological advancement. Captain Soyoung Jang commanded the UES Harmony, which was the smallest ship in the human fleet, but carried weapons that could phase in and out of normal space-time, and strike targets that existed in different dimensions. And her ship also possessed defensive systems that could make it temporarily invisible to all known forms of detection and could allow it to pass through solid matter like a ghost. When the Altarian fleet opened fire with their most powerful energy weapons, they expected to see human ships destroyed in brilliant explosions, but instead they watched in confusion and growing fear as their weapons passed harmlessly through the human vessels, which seemed to flicker in and out of existence like mirages in the desert, and continued advancing toward the Altarian battle line without taking any damage at all. Major Kyunghwan Moon led boarding parties that used personal teleportation devices to appear inside Altarian ships without warning, and his soldiers wore armor that could adapt to any environment and weapons that could fire different types of energy depending on what kind of target they were facing, and they moved through alien vessels like supernatural beings that could not be stopped or even clearly seen. The Battle of Neptune's Edge lasted exactly 14 minutes, and during that time, the Altarian fleet discovered that everything they thought they knew about warfare and technology and their own superiority was completely wrong, and that humanity had developed capabilities that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics, as the aliens understood them. Human ships could phase through enemy weapons fire, and then materialize inside the protective shields of Altarian vessels and fire their own weapons at point-blank range, and some human weapons could teleport their destructive energy directly into the heart of enemy ships, bypassing all defensive systems. And some human ships could split into multiple copies of themselves that could attack from different directions simultaneously. Captain Soyoung Jang demonstrated the most shocking human capability when she used her ship's teleportation system to remove the main power core from the Altarian flagship and transport it into empty space, where it exploded harmlessly and left the Eternal Dominion completely powerless and drifting helplessly while its crew tried to understand what had just happened to their invincible battleship. The Altarian fighters that launched from their carriers found that human defensive systems could create energy fields that stopped incoming attacks and reflected them back at their sources and the human fighters. That engaged them, moved faster than thought, and could change direction instantly without regard for momentum or inertia, and could fire weapons that seemed to bend space around their targets. Admiral Lim watched as alien ship after alien ship was disabled or destroyed by weapons that the Altarians could not understand or counter, and he realized that this was not really a battle but a demonstration, and that the humans were showing mercy by disabling enemy vessels instead of destroying them completely, and that they could have annihilated the entire Altarian fleet in the first minute of combat if they had chosen to do so. High Commander Kethrall tried desperately to retreat, but discovered that his ship's navigation systems were not responding, and that human technology was somehow preventing his fleet from escaping. And when he demanded to know how this was possible, he received a response from Admiral Lim explaining that human ships could create fields that disrupted space-time itself, and made faster-than-light travel impossible within a certain area. The demonstration ended when every remaining Altarian ship found itself completely powerless and drifting in space while human vessels appeared around them like sharks surrounding helpless prey, and Admiral Lim broadcast a message to the defeated alien fleet informing them that they had exactly 1 hour to restore minimal power to their ships and leave the Sol system, or they would be permanently disabled. The battered Altarian fleet limped away from human space, carrying news of their humiliating defeat. The galaxy watched in stunned silence and began to understand that humanity had not simply left the Galactic Council, but had revealed that they possessed technology so advanced that no other species could challenge them, and that the age of alien dominance over human affairs was over, forever. Engineer Chaewon Jung began broadcasting from Earth, and her transmissions reached every inhabited world in the galaxy, and she offered to share basic faster-than-light technology with any species that declared independence from the major galactic powers and agreed to respect human sovereignty and the rights of all smaller species that had been oppressed by the old system. Her broadcasts included detailed technical specifications for building faster-than-light drives that did not require Altarian materials or Altarian permission and energy systems that were more efficient than anything the Zephyrians had developed, and weapons that could defend small worlds against the warships of aggressive empires, and communication networks that could not be controlled or monitored by authoritarian governments. The response was immediate and overwhelming as dozens of smaller alien species announced their independence from the Galactic Council and their intention to form new alliances based on mutual respect and technological cooperation rather than domination and exploitation, and the old order that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years began to crumble as oppressed peoples everywhere realized that they no longer had to submit to the rule of their former masters. The Altarian government faced the choice of accepting the new reality or watching their empire collapse as world after world declared independence and chose to ally with humanity instead of remaining under Altarian control, and similar choices faced every other major power as they realized that their military forces could not defeat human technology and their economies could not function without human cooperation. Dr. Min-jae Yang announced the establishment of the first truly interspecies research facility where humans would work alongside aliens, who accepted the principles of freedom and equality and scientific cooperation, and this facility would develop new technologies that would benefit all species rather than serving the interests of a few powerful empires, and would prove that cooperation was more effective than domination. The galaxy had been transformed in a matter of days from a hierarchical system where powerful species ruled over weaker ones to a new order where technological advancement and mutual respect determined success, and where humanity stood as the most advanced civilization not because they conquered others, but because they had developed capabilities that others could not match and were willing to share their knowledge with those who proved worthy of trust. Ambassador Seo-hyun Kwon stood at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall of Kepler Station, which orbited a blue giant star 300 light-years from Earth, and looked out at representatives from 47 different species who had gathered to witness the formal establishment of the Free Worlds Alliance, and she knew that this moment marked the beginning of a new age in galactic history, where cooperation would replace domination and where technological advancement would be shared rather than hoarded by powerful empires. 1 year had passed since humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had been transformed in ways that no one could have predicted, and the old system of powerful species ruling over weaker ones had collapsed as world after world declared independence and chose to join the new alliance that offered equality and mutual respect instead of submission and exploitation. The Galactic Council itself no longer existed in any meaningful way, and the Great Chamber where Ambassador Jin-Woo Park had announced humanity's withdrawal now stood empty and silent while the species that had once ruled the galaxy struggled to adapt to a new reality where their technology was obsolete and their military forces were helpless against human capabilities. President Miran Choi had decided that humanity's new capital should be located away from Earth to demonstrate that the Free Worlds Alliance was truly international and not simply an extension of human government. And Kepler Station had been built using the most advanced human technology and served as a symbol of what could be accomplished when different species worked together toward common goals. Dr. Min-jae Yang had established research facilities throughout the station where human scientists worked alongside alien researchers who had embraced the principles of scientific cooperation and technological sharing. And these facilities had already produced breakthrough discoveries that benefited all member species and proved that diversity of thought and experience led to faster progress than any single species could achieve alone. The former Altarian Empire had split into dozens of smaller governments as worlds that had been conquered centuries ago declared independence and chose to govern themselves. And some of these new governments had applied to join the Free Worlds Alliance, while others had chosen to remain isolated and try to rebuild their societies without outside interference. High Commander Kethral had been removed from his position after the humiliating defeat at Neptune's edge, and the new Altarian leadership had approached the Alliance with requests for technical assistance and trade agreements. But these negotiations were proceeding slowly because the humans wanted to be certain that the Altarians had truly abandoned their imperial ambitions and were serious about respecting the rights of other species. The Zephyrian civilization had faced a different kind of crisis as their energy-dependent society nearly collapsed when human-maintained fusion cores began failing, but a group of young Zephyrian scientists, led by someone called Velthra, had worked with human engineers to develop new energy systems that were more efficient and more reliable than their old technology, and the Zephyrians had become one of the most enthusiastic supporters of the Alliance. The merchant worlds that had lost their economic networks when humans withdrew their support had been forced to rebuild their systems using simpler technology that they could understand and maintain themselves, and this process had been painful and expensive, but had ultimately made them more independent and self-sufficient, and many of these worlds had also joined the Alliance. Arvin Olek had lost his trading empire when human logistics experts withdrew from his operations, but he had learned from his mistakes and had built a new company that employed workers from multiple species and used Alliance-approved technology that could be maintained by any member world, and his new business was smaller than his old one, but was more stable and more ethical. The Deep Dwellers had surprised everyone by proving to be natural allies of humanity, because their underwater civilization had always valued cooperation and scientific research over military conquest, and they had quickly adapted to Alliance technology and had contributed their own discoveries in underwater engineering and pressure-resistant materials that had applications throughout the galaxy. Director Sunho An had established diplomatic missions on every world that expressed interest in joining the Alliance, and these missions provided technical assistance and educational programs that helped alien societies transition from the old hierarchical system to the new cooperative model, and the success of these programs had convinced many species that the Alliance offered a better future than the old galactic order. The most dramatic transformation had occurred among the smaller species that had been oppressed by the major powers for centuries, and these peoples had embraced Alliance technology and Alliance principles with enthusiasm and had quickly become some of the most productive and innovative members of the new organization, and had proven that size and military power were less important than intelligence and determination. Some alien species had chosen to remain outside the Alliance and had attempted to maintain their old ways of life, but they found themselves increasingly isolated as trade networks shifted toward Alliance worlds and as their technology became obsolete compared to the advanced systems that Alliance members shared with each other. The remnants of the old Galactic Council had tried to reorganize themselves into a new imperial structure, but they lacked the economic and military power to force other worlds to join them, and they had gradually faded into irrelevance as more and more species chose to ally with humanity instead of submitting to alien rule. Captain Dong Yun. Ryu commanded a fleet of human ships that patrolled Alliance space and provided protection for member worlds against pirates and raiders and aggressive empires that refused to accept the new galactic order, and his ships used non-lethal weapons whenever possible and focused on deterring aggression rather than conquering territory. The technology, sharing programs established by engineer Chaewon Jung had revolutionized manufacturing and transportation throughout Alliance space, and worlds that had been poor and backward under the old system had become prosperous and advanced as they gained access to human knowledge and human assistance in developing their own capabilities. Dr. Eunji Nam had established a university on Kepler Station where the brightest students from all Alliance worlds could study advanced physics and engineering. And many of these students had made discoveries that even human scientists found impressive and had proven that intelligence and creativity existed in all species and that cooperation multiplied the achievements of everyone involved. The military. Forces of the Alliance were organized on principles of defense rather than conquest, and each member world maintained its own defense fleet while contributing to a central force that could respond to major threats, and these forces used human technology, but were commanded by officers from many different species who had proven their commitment to Alliance values. President Miran Choi had announced that humanity would never again seek to dominate other species, but would instead use their advanced technology to protect the weak and to promote scientific advancement and peaceful cooperation. And this policy had made the Alliance attractive to species that had suffered under the old imperial system. The economic prosperity that resulted from Alliance membership had convinced many worlds that cooperation was more profitable than conquest, and that technological advancement was more valuable than military power, and the Alliance had grown steadily as more species applied for membership and proved their commitment to peaceful coexistence. Ambassador Seo-hyun Kwon concluded her speech by announcing that the Free Worlds Alliance now included 63 different species and controlled nearly half the inhabited worlds in the galaxy, and that applications for membership continued to arrive from species that had seen the benefits of joining an organization based on equality and mutual respect rather than domination and fear. As she looked out at the diverse gathering of beings who had chosen to work together toward a better future, she realized that humanity's decision to leave the Galactic Council had not caused the galaxy to spiral into panic, but had instead freed it from an oppressive system and had allowed it to evolve into something far better than anyone had imagined possible, and the age of human ascendancy had begun not through conquest, but through the simple act of showing other species that there was a better way to live among the stars.